Attending a military academy, you might think I learned most of my life lessons in the field doing some type of military training, or maybe in the classrooms here at West Point. But in reality, I learned my most important life lessons in my business on the 4th floor of Sherman Barracks with my roommate. And a business is a familiar concept to all of us. It's a group of individuals who work together to seek some sort of profit. Except our business was a little different. It ran on a different economy. You see, our cost wasn't in dollars. It was in time. The time we spent investing in others. And our profit, unfortunately, we weren't making any money. Our profit was really just in fulfillment and making a difference in the lives of the people around us. And so I told you it was in a barracks earlier. And it sounds like a scary term, but it's really just a dorm for cadets. And so Sherman Barracks has 5 floors. About 120 cadets live on each floor. And you can picture my office. It's just my room. So you walk into my office. You have my desk right over here. You know, my bookshelf, it's very military. Everything's in height order. Everything's organized. My roommate, Zach, his desk's right over here. Bookshelf, same exact way. Right up here is my bed, right? Made just how West Point wants it to be made. And as you could probably guess, Zach's bed's made the same way. And so it's a Friday night. And unlike any other college, you know, me and Zach are working on homework, American politics. And so we're working on our homework, and we're chitter-chattering, we're talking back and forth, and we're cracking jokes. We start to hear footsteps down the hall. And these footsteps start to get closer and closer, and eventually we realize these are coming to our room. And that's about the time we hear a knock. And we both perk up from our homework, and it's Danny. Danny's a freshman at West Point, and he asks if he can come in to talk. We say sure. And before we ask Danny what's going on, he takes a seat in the only non-military thing in this room, this old, dusty leather chair that was right between me and Zach. And he lets out this big sigh. She's upset again. What you don't know about Danny is Danny's from California, and that's where his girlfriend still goes to school and lives, back in California. And he's up at West Point on a Friday night doing homework. And they're having long-distance relationship issues. And so Danny's coming to us for some advice. And Danny looks to me and says, like, hey, Kyle, what do you think? And I looked at Danny, I'm like, I don't know, dude. My longest relationship is 4 weeks. You probably shouldn't follow any of my advice here. And that's about the time we both looked to Zach. See, like any good business, I don't have all the right answers, but my business partner fortunately did in this case. And so we play to our strengths here at Werner Yacht Consulting Services. And Zach just lays it out there. You know, he's had a girlfriend for 6 years, 2 of which Zach's been staying in this room with me at West Point. And he gets this long distance thing now. And he tells Danny, if I've learned anything, it's that I'm never right. So my best advice to you is call your girlfriend, tell her you're wrong, and tell her you're sorry. And in that moment, I think to myself, gosh, I take a step back and I'm like, that is really good advice for one reason. I hear Zach use that line on his girlfriend every night, and he goes to sleep happy. And at that point in time, I kind of realized it's not just Danny. It's Claudia, who isn't sure if she wants to stay at West Point. It's Aaron, who's struggling physically. It's Jill, who wants to mentor other freshmen. It's Nora, who honestly just wants to be a better person. And all these people are coming to our room that eventually we started losing sleep, and we had to slap up a business sign to make sure we could close our door at night and lock it and get some rest. And so it was Werner Yacht Consulting Services, open till 10 o'clock, walk-ins welcomed. And at that point in time is kind of when I realized that we were giving out so much advice, I had to make sure people weren't coming back to me, holding me liable for the advice we were giving them. And we came up with a company disclaimer, and every time a new client walked in the room, I had to tell them, hey, I failed English my freshman year. Like, that's a basic composition course. You might not want to be coming here for academic advice. And despite that, people kept coming back. And we kept investing in the people around us. And we got this feeling, it just felt good. And we became passionate about the people. And put the clients aside, guys like Danny, the relationship with Zach was enough to break even. And I didn't want this relationship to stop, and I didn't want this investment business to stop. And that's about the time the semester ended. And I realized this whole relationship business isn't unique to West Point. I already have relationships in my life that I can invest in, ones that I took for advantage of before. My parents, my 2 younger sisters, all my friends that I already had that I just didn't spend enough time with, and everyone I was going to meet in the future. And so I decided to apply this business concept to other aspects of my life. And that's about the time I walked into a leadership role at West Point. See, that summer I got to show 24 high schoolers around and show them what it means to be a cadet for a week. And that's when I met Nick. See, Nick's this goofy kid from a suburb of Pittsburgh who just wanted to know what it means to be a cadet. And so I showed Nick and these 23 other high schoolers around. And I got to see things that I never expected. I took them to classes. I took them to engineering classes. We got to learn together. We did character development with the honor code here at West Point for these high schoolers. We even went to a range, and they got to fire blanks off an assault rifle as a high school junior. And I got to learn things about Nick and the other high schoolers. And I started making time investments that I didn't really realize I was making until the week ended. When that week ended, I did my job, and I could walk away happy and satisfied. But I thought, how can I continue investing in these high schoolers? What will it take to make myself continue to go the extra mile? And so I decided to start a group chat, and I decided to start keeping in touch with them. And over the course of their senior year, I would offer any advice I learned from West Point. I would share mistakes I was making here so they weren't making the same ones. And I really just, through an email or a group chat, text message, share some advice. And they gave me feedback, and over the years, or over the course of that year, they let me know where they were going to school, what kind of schools they were getting into. And they would ask me questions about the application process here at West Point. And eventually, the summer hits. It's about a year after we met. And I thought, how can I continue to invest in these relationships? And that's when 8 of them made it easy. You see, 8 of those high schoolers decided to come here to West Point. And by nature of coming to West Point, they weren't going to have any contact with the outside world besides written letter. So I decided no matter what path you were going down, no matter what school you were going to, I'm going to write you a letter. And so I sent a text out to the group chat. I'm like, hey, please send me your address. I'd really love to write you a letter. And then I start writing letters, and I'm like, Nick, take advantage of these next 4 years. You're the only person that's responsible for your happiness. Put in the effort that makes you proud of this 4-year experience. And I'm writing this letter, and that's when I pull out my phone. I got a text message. It was something I never really figured I'd get, but I got a text from Nick. And that's when Nick decided he was going to invest in people too. He was going to write those other high schoolers he spent a week with a letter and just talk to them about what he was learning as he was going off on his path to Penn State. That's something I never sought to inspire in someone. I never really sought to inspire someone to invest in other relationships. But it was a very fulfilling feeling when I got that and I read that text message from Nick. And to kind of better understand this, I talk about a cost-benefit analysis of business perspective. The relationships we were building, it didn't take too much for us to keep these going. It was a text message here and there. It was a really low cost, a 15-minute letter. But the benefit was kind of priceless. And the benefit's something Clay Christensen talks about in his book, How You Measure Your Life. He's a Harvard business professor. And he talks about the benefits of a long-term contribution. He specifically talks about your kids, investing in them, and how that long-term contribution pays off in the future, and you'll see it 10 years from now. So don't be discouraged when you don't see it today. And it's a long-term investment on happiness. And so what I realized, though, is there were some immediate payoffs for me in this business. You see that feeling when I got a text from Nick saying he was going to write letters for other people? That feeling when Danny knocked on my door late at night because he wanted to talk to me about his relationship issues. It felt better than anything I felt before in my life. It was better than an A on a report card here at West Point. It was better than winning a fleet boxing match. It was better than a game-winning tackle in overtime in high school football. And it was definitely better than the dog pile that happened after that tackle. It was something I've never experienced, and I found myself craving this feeling. This feeling ultimately changed how I measure my life. From that point forward, I was measuring my life by the guys like Danny, who came to my door in the time of need. The guys like Nick that I could inspire to invest in other relationships. Selfishly, I wanted to be there for everyone because I was getting this feeling. And I was reading Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last, and that's when I came across this chemical your brain produces, oxytocin. It's this chemical of generosity, this contribution beyond yourself and beyond what's expected of you. It's that feeling of deep love and connection for another human being. And that's what I started to think I was getting, and I started to research it more. And I came across this frontier neuroscience experiment where they linked oxytocin and intentionally building these social ties and connections to an increased performance at work. And even Google did an experiment where they found that managers who personally invest in the well-being and success of the individual, of their individual subordinates, to be more productive quantitatively and qualitatively for Google. And that's when I realized that this whole business wasn't just giving me this fulfilling feeling. It was actually making me more productive and impacting my performance on more levels than I realized. You see, that kid who failed English his freshman year just worked on and published a capstone paper in a conference this semester. I was reaching success that I never dreamed possible in my life. And earlier I told you, this whole business, it's not unique to me. It's not unique to Zach. It's not unique to West Point. We all have this business. We are all investing in this relationship business today, whether you realize it or not. And so I want you to think about your relationship business. Think about who you're investing with. Zach turned out to be a great business partner for me. I learned a lot from him. And think about the people you're investing in. Guys like Danny deserve that investment. And make sure you're making those investments count. Because if you ask me, who do I do this for? I think to myself, am I doing it for Danny? Am I doing it for Zach? Am I doing it for myself? I don't think I could give you a wrong answer. And maybe you should ask yourself that question. I'd like to thank Zach for being with me for those past 2 years at West Point, and thank you for listening today.